In this video, we're going to install APAR PO05616. And what you'll notice is essentially this is for ICFM-1505, but essentially what you'll notice is that this is really not related to ICFM so much as it is Case Manager, which you have to download and install, and then you have to install its Interim Fix Pack 001, and then after that we're going to install Content Navigator. And we're going to run into some trouble along the way, and we're going to fix them as well. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that once you install your VMs, these VMs right out of the gate are going to have problems with their SSL certificates. And here is a post that I wrote that explains what's going on and what you need to do. But essentially what's happening is because these VMs were created and then they weren't running for a long time until you installed them, WAS didn't have a chance to update the key.p12 file, which is essentially your SSL keys to run each of the profiles. And so these are essentially old, they're outdated, and they need to be updated with the Ssl version of it. So what you do is you just essentially rename every single one of the profiles key.p12 file with this command. So it's just going to find all the key.p12s, it's going to look for the etc folder, and then it's going to do this command, show you what it's going to do with the -t one time for every result over here, and then it's going to substitute whatever it finds line by line with this thing, and then it's going to do a move with and it's going to put that thing in there, and then it's going to put it back in again. So this is just a simple move command. We're going to rename them all to .old, and then what you do is you reboot the VM, and you do that both on the IDDN and then the core servers or nodes, and also the case node. Do that on the case node as well. And once you do that, then you'll be able to get the VMs to launch properly. And I've gone ahead and done that here. So just keep in mind that what we're going to look at now are the admin consoles, and really you have two admin consoles, the core and the IDDN. And if we look first at core, you can see that all of the, let's look at the servers first just so you can see them. There they are, they're all up and they're running. And then if we look at the applications for core, you can see there they are and they're all running as well. And then if you go to the IDDN server, the same thing applies. So we'll go to the servers there and make sure that all the servers are running, and they are. And then applications, let's make sure all of those are running, and they are. Now, the note that we just looked at before with the SSL was important because not all of these would have been running, is the point. Some of these would have been in a stopped state, and that trick from the previous page fixes that. So the point is that right now that we have all of these up and running, and what we're going to do, one of the things we need to do is for the navigator, we need the ping page. And I just want to show that the ping page is here and it's running. Okay, so let's start with the case manager download and its instructions. So I'm going to open up the instructions here. And I scroll down, we're going to install the fix pack interactively with this file here. And so I've opened up WinSCP and I've logged in as icfmmgr. That's important. And then on the right side here, I'm going to create a new directory, and I'm just going to call that temp. And actually, let's call it, this is a long story, but let's call it temp 5. And then I'm going to go into that folder, and I'm going to drag over the file that we need, which is this fixpack one, which is located here. This is an old listing, so that's why you saw something there, but actually there is nothing there. If you refresh, you can tell. So we're going to drag that over. Okay, so now on the case server, I'm just going to log in as icfmmgr, and I'm going to go into the temp5 folder. There it is, and we need to unzip this. Really, we're going to untar it, so there's the command for that. And that worked just fine. And now we're going to log in as ICFM Manager. And we need to go into the terminal. And we're going to go back into that temp5 folder. And we're going to run the bin file, the executable. And we're just going to click OK and Next all the way through here. And I should point out that you need to have the system running. So you need to be able to, the system needs to be able to log into Case Manager. So you'll need to start the service if it's not already started. And then finally we get to the done screen here. And then this will finish. Now the failed to load, you can ignore that. And it should just, the second we'll wait for that, but it should finish and take us back to the command prompt. And that takes us to the end of the instructions for the first part of the installation, which is Case Manager 5.2.1.3. And now we're going on to this, which is the Interim Fix 001 for IBM Case Manager. And before we do that, I just want to show you the version that we have, which is listed here. So that's 5.2.1.3, and according to the operations manual, we were at 5.2.1.2.1. And just as a sanity check, that's exactly what we were trying to do, 5.2.1.3. So of course the point now is to get to the interim fix for 5.2.1.3. Now, the first thing we're going to do here is go to the core server and then go down to WebSphere application servers, and then we're going to CM server, then session management. Then we're going to uncheck the security integration box. And if I hover over this, you can see exactly what it does. It specifies whether security integration is enabled. When security integration is enabled, the session manager associates the identity of users with their HTTP sessions. You'll get an error during the installation unless you uncheck this. So you need to uncheck it. And we're going to, once we're all done, you need to recheck it again. But let's hit save. And then just reboot the whole VM. So I'm going to exit here. I'm going to go back to root and I'm going to reboot that. Okay, now I'm going to log back in as ICFM Manager now that it's rebooted. And we're going to open up a terminal. And of course, we need to start up the server, so let's do that. And while we're waiting for that, let's log back into the case server, and we need to transfer file 5.2.1.3-ICM.zip over to this server. So I'm just going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it I'm going to call it temp. And I need to get that file in there. So again, 5.2.1.3-ICM-IF001 temp into that directory. Okay, now I'm going to go back to case. We're going to log in as ICFM Manager here, and now we're going to do a make dir temp2, and we're going to hold the original software. This is part of the installation instructions for that interim fix. So what we're going to do is go into the temp folder, and we're going to, we can LL that, but really we're going to unzip it. Okay, and now we need to actually stop the server components so that we can run the installation. Okay, and now we need to log back in as ICFM Manager, and we're going to run a bunch of commands. These come directly out of the instructions, I just modified them so that they're specific. The instructions are very vague. They tell you to go here or go there. These are the very specific instructions that you need to run. And I'll post all of these instructions below the video, but you can see what they are there. And now we're going to do a cd into temp, and we are now going on to step 5 in the instructions, which looks like this with rsync. And now we're going on to step 6, which has 2 commands, which are these two. And that takes us to step 7, which are these commands. And now we're back into step 8, where we need to turn the system back on. So I'm going to start it up again. Okay, and now we're going to log back in as ICFM manager, and we are going to, since we're sort of dealing in this step with the content engine, this will tell us where our current version is, 5.2.1.2, and now we're going to continue. So we're going to make a new temp3 directory, and in here we're going to upload a file, and that file is, let's refresh this. We'll go into temp3, and the file that we need is 5.2.1.2 P8CPE client Linux fix pack 2. Let's copy that in here. And then now we're going back into the GUI, and we're going to go into that temp3 directory, and we're going to do a tar on that file that's in there. So this is just sort of unzipping it, which should seem very similar to what we did before, because it is very similar. And now we're going to run the installer for this. And we're going to click on next. Now the system needs to be running at this point, so if it's not, you'll see some strange errors. But essentially we're just going to click on next here. We'll see the connection was successful. And next. And then you see this, and we'll click on done. That should end the graphical installer. We'll let that go back to the prompt. We can check the output as it suggested. So let's do that. And we should see a series of success messages here. Successful, successful, successful. And looks good. Okay, the next step is we're going to run into a permissions problem unless we fix that. With the following command, we need to log out as ICFM manager and set this, because by default it's 755 and not 775, which we need. So we set that. And then we're going to come back in here and we're going to run the configuration for case manager. So here we go, configure and config mgr. Okay, and then we're going to go up to File and open Profile. We're going to go in here, open this, and now we're going to pick up from step 9. So in other words, we're here now, step 9, and we're going to do create case manager applications first. So here we go, and click on run task. And And I'm going to scroll up a little bit here, move this up a little so we can see the output a little better. Okay, and you should see that the WAR file was created and the EAR file was created. And now we're going to deploy the Case Manager API, which is here. And then while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go back to our core server, and we'll just make sure that something that this is actually down. I would not expect CM server to be running right now. And now let's look at the applications. And sure enough, all the Case Manager applications are not working, as well as the counter fraud, some of the counter fraud ones, FileNet and so on. So that's, I would expect that. Okay, then we get a success message. So now we're on to register the IBM Case Manager Services plugin, which is here. This one's a little faster. Okay, now we go to deploy Case Manager Builder, which is here. Okay, and that finished. And then just out of curiosity, we have our applications. Our servers are all running. The applications are all running. The ping page is running for Navigator. And now we're on to deploy and register widgets package, which puts us here. And that finished running, and now we're going to register IBM Case Manager Administration plugin, which is here. Which is also relatively fast. And the next step is to restart the Case Manager server. I would recommend just restart the whole VM. So let's do that. So let's do a reboot. Okay, and no surprise, we're going to start the server. Waiting for that, let's just double check. Let's go back to our servers. We see that CM server is not yet up yet. But once that's finished, and we come back to our servers list, there we go. And if we go back to all applications, there we go. And if we go back to our Navigator ping page, there we go. And that takes us through to this last step of that of the instructions. Now, remember that the purpose of all that was to install 5.2.1.3 and make sure it had the fix pack with it. So let's verify. So we'll go in here. We'll do our listing. So non-prod 5.2.1.3 and our production 5.2.1. Here's 5.2.1.3 for production, and we also have our interim fix listed. Here's the production interim fix for 5.2.1.2. So from here, at least, it's a bit confusing whether it's installed or not. But in any case, now it's time to go on to the Content Navigator. So let's pull up its instructions. There we are. And let's go to step 1, back up your current installation. And here we're supposed to, according to ICFM, we need to shut down the engine application. So we're going to all applications, and we should see counter fraud engine, and we're going to stop that. So we'll go here and submit action. Just waiting for that to take effect. And although that's taking a long time, I'm not sure why it didn't update. But if we right click on all applications and open in a new tab, you'll see that in fact it did shut off. So there's that. And in fact, we do see here the operation on blah, blah, did not complete an expected amount of time. It may have completed successfully. Check the logs. And it did, so I'm going to open up ICFM Manager one more time. And once again, we need to copy over a file. But before we do that, let's open up the terminal. And we're going to go in here. And we need to copy over a file called 2036 ICN. So that's this one, and I'm going to create a new temp folder. No surprise here, called temp4. And in temp4, we're going to copy over 2036 ICN FP006A linux.tar. And while we're waiting for that, let's look at the ping page. And yep, sure enough, that's still working. Okay, and our upload finished, so now we're going to go into temp4, which is here, and we are going to actually we're about to untar this, so we'll do an xvf and 2, there we go. And just so you know where we're at, we're on step 4 here, and moving on to step 5. Step 5, we're actually going to skip and move on to step 6. Sorry, take that back. We're not really done with step 4 yet because we need to run the bin image in here, which is IBM Content and so on. And we're just going to run this through like we did the others and accept all the defaults. So here we go, we'll click on next, and it says we're about to upgrade. That's what we want. And to go ahead and install. And it's going through the steps now. And then while that's running, let's once again come back in here. Let's go to the servers. They're all up. Let's look at the applications and specifically the ping page for Navigator. Navigator is running. If I refresh our ping page here, we should get a response. We do. Okay. Still running the script. And go to next. And let's go ahead and start the configuration and deployment tool. And this is where we're going to skip step 5 and we're going on to step 6. And in step 6, we are supposed to check our ping page for the Navigator. So, you know, we've been doing that, of course. And we're going to look at the CE client build, and that says DAP 5.2.1, and we're going to compare that against the CE against the client. Let's see, CE client, or the build actually. So there we go. So DAP 5.2.1.0.0.2.1.2.0. 5.2.1.0.3-ICFM-IF001 and they match. Okay, so now we'll go back here. We'll go to File, Open a Deployment, and so we're on step 6 here. We're going to go to ICN, CFP. We're going to click on Finish, and we're going to skip A, but we're going to go to step B, which is this step here, configuring your database and data source. So we'll double click on that, but we need to make an adjustment here, which is to go down. So let's see this list. You can see all of these settings, and we're going to uncheck this box. Hold on, try it again. There we go, and run the task, and go ahead and save it first. And you can see that the data source already exists, and it says that it finished. Optionally remove the data source from the application server configuration or use a different data source name. And so anyhow, that worked. So now we're going on to configure the task manager component, and we'll run that. And that finished as well. So now we'll go on to D, configure the IBM Content Navigator web application. We'll click Run. And that also finished just fine. Now let's switch back to see how we are with this ping page. Actually, let's go back here, Applications. So we are Navigators up and running. And now let's go to the ping page. It's still up and running, so very good. And we're now on to build the IBM Content Navigator web application. So let's go ahead and run that task. Okay, and that finished, and now we are supposed to go to the deploy the web application task. So let's do that. Run the task. And while we're waiting for that to finish, no surprise here, let's go double check our ping page. The reason we're doing this is because this used to fail. Now this isn't terribly unsurprising. The deployment's not done, so there's really no application to respond right now, and that's where we're getting that other message. But what we had been seeing was a ping page that didn't come back at all. It would be a 404 message, and that's what we're trying to avoid, and that's why we keep checking it at various points. And here you can see that it finished and all of the tasks were successfully completed. And that takes us through step 6, which is on to step 7, stop the IBM Content Navigator web application server. Now, before we do that, once again, I'm going to go back here. We're going to check the applications. We're going to go down to Navigator. We see that it's off. And then, of course, if I try to reload the page, we're going to get the 404 error message. So we're supposed to shut off that server, and that server is the case manager server in our environment. So there we go, it's stopped. And now we need to clear the application server cache. And in our environment, that's here, and we need to go into temp, and then we need to go into WS, into the name of the server, which is the node, which is there. And then we can go into the server. And I think actually, let's double check if it's here. It's called WS temp. So in our case, it wasn't in the temp folder. It's listed here. So I'm going to cd into that directory. And we're supposed to delete the following folders, which includes the Navigator folder from the temp directory. So in our case, it's here. So I'm going to do a cd into that directory, and we're supposed to delete the Navigator folder. I'm actually just going to move it to, well, first of all, I'm going to make a folder called root, and I'm just going to call it my name. And I'll move the Navigator folder into root and that new folder. And now we're supposed to delete the WS temp, the folders inside of it. So let's go in there, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take all of these, and we're going to move them in here. There we go. And then in step 9, we're supposed to start the web application server. So I'm going to go back to the servers, and let's click on CM server, and we'll click on start, and we'll see what result we get. And while we're waiting for that to happen, let's let's check for a system out. Let's look at its log. So that is here. And in fact, why don't we do a tail on it? Here we go. And then back here in the server, it said it started successfully. The collection may need to be refreshed to show the server status. Indeed. And we have it running. Now let's look at the applications. We see that the engine is still off because we told it to shut off. We can turn it back on now, but Navigator is running, so let's go back over to Navigator and refresh this page. And we'll see that we get a 443 error. And if I turn our application back on, our engine here, which is really not related, but let's turn it on anyway. Submit the action. Okay, and so it did come back up. And once again, if I go back to the Navigator and I try to ping it, I don't get a response. Now, if I try in a different browser, because we are supposed to avoid the, we could potentially have a problem with the browser caching the response, but no, it doesn't look like that's the case. So it turns out that the error is related to this. If I go into this folder, opt IBM WebSphere App Server, Profile CM Profile, Installed Apps Core Cell, take a look at the Navigator ears permissions. And you can try to reset these. So you could do a chmod r, actually let's do an owner first, wasmgr and ICFM team, and you could do that recursively through the folders by saying, you know, navigator .ear. But even if you do that and you restart the VM or restart the server, it's still not going to work. You're still going to get a 404 error. And you can see that if I go into the ping page and I press Control, Shift, and R to reload the page, I'm still getting an error. And even if I hit Control, Shift, and Delete in Firefox and were to delete all of this, you would still get the same error message. And so the solution for this is not very obvious, but here's how it works. You go to your All Applications, you go down to Navigator, and then you click on the Navigator application and you remove it. And then hit OK. And what we have to do is manually add that application into WAS. And once that part is finished, hit Save. Make sure all of your applications are up and running. I thought I saw one that wasn't earlier. Okay, and now let's go to Applications, New Application, New Enterprise Application, Browse. Now we need to locate that particular ear file. So I've already put my ear file in here. Here it is, Navigator ear. And actually, where it's located is here. So you go into this folder, and then you'll see your Navigator ear. And then all I did was to open that up through, through WinSCP, copied it over here. And so now I'm able to hit Browse, and then we're going to Next. Now that's a fairly large file, so that's going to take a few minutes to process. And then while we're waiting, just take a look here. If you go to your core cell, your installed apps, you'll notice that Navigator is no longer here. So that's what we would expect since we removed it, of course. So now we're going to go to fast path, and we're really going to leave these settings kind of default for everything. The trick, though, is this step 2, where we need to determine the right cluster to deploy the application to. So we're going to choose a CM cluster and the core web server, and we need to select all of these. We have to actually click each of them, and then click on Apply, and you'll notice these update. Then we can go Next, and next we're really not going to change anything else. Well, all that did, by the way, was take that application and it says send it to that web server, so our IHS or IBM HTTP server, and basically deploy it there and on that server in that cluster. Then you click on Finish, and then eventually you'll get to a screen that looks like this, and you can see that the application is being deployed. And then lastly, we'll get to a screen that looks like this: Application Navigator EAR installed successfully. Hit save to save that to the master configuration, and click on Applications, All Applications, and then let's just be sure. You'll notice now that the application name has changed from Navigator to Navigator EAR because we left those defaults when we deployed it. So here we go, and I'll scroll down, Navigator EAR. Now it's not on, so if you get that problem, hit Submit Action here to turn it on. And you should get a message here that says the node started up okay, the CM server started okay, that the Navigator EAR is running. And now you should be able to go back to your ping page, hit Control, Shift, and R, and there is our ping page. So now as a sanity test, let's just go back through our servers. Let's make sure all the servers are up. They are. Let's go through all the applications and make sure they're all up. They are. And that means at this point we have now completed PO05616 with all of these prerequisites. Now, one other very important thing to note is that if you try to log into the Counter Fraud Management interface, and by that I mean really the Navigator interface, in Firefox, this doesn't apply to Internet Explorer, you may get this message here, and the reason for it is because of caching on Firefox. So to undo that, to fix that, hit Control, Shift, and Delete on Firefox. Then make sure these two especially are checked. Hit Clear now, and now reload that page, and you will see the login screen. So now let's just double check everything, looks okay here. And yes, it does. There we go.